Hey gang, and welcome to this Dueling Rabbits Productions video. In this special by request demonstration, we are going to consider how to carry out a complete reorganization of the leashes on a pattern shaft draw loom. Just for kicks, we're going to try something new. It is a truism that one of the great benefits of a draw loom is that we do not have to stop and rethread our entire warp when we want to make a change to the configuration of our pattern shafts. We can simply reorganize our units on the fly and return to weaving in virtually no time at all. It's cool. If you've seen my previous videos on pseudo damask and Bergman weaves, you will know that I've been working with 51 leashes arranged in a single point. This has allowed me to produce symmetrical designs efficiently and accurately. But I am not limited to the design possibilities afforded by this arrangement. What if, for example, I wanted to weave something like this? Here's my monogram, a decidedly non-symmetrical motif, framed on either side by identical borders of hearts and flower buds. My new leash arrangement would look like this. Here are the 19 units for my central motif. Each unit will be placed on its own pattern shaft in a straight threading to give me the functionality of a single unit draw loom. On either side are 2 points of 13 units each on 7 pattern shafts. This will allow me to weave both borders at the same time. With a few extra units on an X shaft, it's a nice arrangement that makes good use of 27 of my pattern shafts. Challenge then is to get from this to this with as little stress and fuss as possible. A common way to do this is, essentially, to start over, with all the units regathered at the back of the loom for redistribution. We typically do this by feeding a cord through each leash in turn as it sits in its current position. When all the leashes have been threaded onto the cord, we remove the pattern shafts and remount the leashes, in order, onto a headling bar, and use our preferred method for getting them back onto shafts in the new arrangement. I don't love this approach, for a few reasons. I never manage to get all the leashes collected, and inevitably am left with a couple dangling in midair. This makes it a pain to get them all back together, in order, on the headling bar. Personally, I find wrangling all the units at once makes for heavy, difficult work. Also, it means a lot of counting at the cross. I hate this and don't even do it the first time. If you've seen any of my videos about dressing the draw loom, you know I will do whatever it takes to count and plan in advance so that I don't have to do any thinking at leash deployment time. Here follows a way to avoid all such calamities and take advantage of the fact that our leashes are already organized in a way that allows us to save ourselves a lot of effort. You know me, I'm all about forward planning. Let's look more closely at our goal. We can see that our leashes fall into 4 groups: the units on our X shaft at the back of our loom, the 12 units on either side that form the legs of our points, the 2 units at the apex of each point, and the 19 units for our central motif. You may have noticed that I've color-coded each group. You know why? While still on the pattern shafts, we're going to transfer each group onto its own gaily colored carabiner for easy deployment down the road. It's so pain-free, you won't believe it. Carabiners are the new secret weapon of the drawloom world. We're standing inside the loom now with the single point arrayed before us. We can see from the diagram that the first thing we need to consider is the outer units of our X shaft, destined for gold carabiners. We will then collect these blue units at the outer edges of our points. Finally, we will collect our 2 green units at the tippy tips. I'll lay my carabiners by so that they're conveniently at hand. Let's get started with the X shaft. First, we'll count out 2 leashes of 4 pattern heddles each and clip the gold carabiner on. I'll let it rest on the warp until I need it again. Then I'll do the same thing on the other side. It's important to pick up and save the leashes in order, so I take my time and work carefully. Then I pick up the next 6 units for my first blue carabiner. This takes me up to the point on the right-hand side. I'll scrunch the leashes aside a bit so I can easily remember where I am in the process. I do the same thing with the other blue carabiner. I really like this method because it means I can work on both sides of the warp at once and focus my effort on smaller groups of leashes. I find I make way fewer mistakes than I do with some other methods I've tried. Finally, I clip on the 2 green carabiners for my pointy points. One leash on the right and one leash on the left. I think that's enough to be going on with. Now, with my leashes securely bundled, I can remove them from the pattern shafts, safe in the knowledge that no bad things will happen in the process. I remove the pattern shafts one by one, and when a carabiner has been freed, I slide it to the back of the loom behind me to get it out of the way. Now, in the past, a few viewers have accused me of manhandling my warps with excessive gusto. Rest assured, a tensioned warp is a surprisingly resilient thing, and it can easily withstand the weight of the lingos and pattern shafts. I can rest both on the warp as I work. There go the leashes on the first blue carabiner and the second blue carabiner. Both of these are now hanging safely off the back of the loom. Finally, my 2 green carabiners with 1 unit each. These are the tips of my border points. Off they go to join their comrades. This is how the leashes look from the back of the loom. The carabiners are slung over the back beam with the weight of the lingos supported by the tensioned warp. Already I've made an impressive dent in my arrangement, and I have far fewer leashes with which to concern myself. It's time to select the leashes for the other legs of my points, as well as the single purple units that will form a separator between my borders and the central panel. 6 units go on a blue carabiner for the point on the right-hand side, and 6 units on another blue carabiner for the point on the left-hand side. I really love working in these small groups. I enjoy not having to wrestle with too many leashes at once and find I don't have to think too far ahead. I can check as I go, and any mistakes are caught early enough that remediation is easy and straightforward. Finally, I collect 1 unit on each side for my purple carabiners. These will go onto the X shaft at the far end of the process. That's 7 pattern shafts worth, so I think I'll stop for now and move these leashes to the back of the loom. Pattern shafts can rest on the warp temporarily when the first set of carabiners is on the move, but I find it's a good idea to have some sort of holding area standing by to receive the pattern shafts as they are taken off the loom. I don't like them clattering to the floor in a big messy pile and have my loom bench right next to me as I work. Purple carabiners next. Only 2 leashes, which is easy. Sometimes I just rest my empty pattern shaft on top of the harness, which can be more convenient when there are only a few. Now all that's left is the 19 leashes destined for the straight threading for my design's central panel. These are going to go on big red carabiners. I'm going to use 2 of them because small bundles. I'll count out the 10 leashes on the right side of the pack first. One more carabiner to go and I'm done. It is satisfying and not a little amazing to discover that I do indeed have exactly 9 leashes left on my pattern shafts. I group them together on their red carabiner, remove the remaining pattern shafts, and loop everything over the back of the loom as before. When I'm done, my pattern harness stands completely empty. All the leashes are arranged neatly and securely at the back of the loom, their colors already foreshadowing the arrangement that is to come. No need for counting or strategizing at this point. I already know this red carabiner will be deployed first, with its rightmost unit destined for the first pattern shaft at the front of the loom. No time like the present. I'm back inside the loom now with my first pattern shaft at the ready. I retrieve the red carabiner and prepare to do the thing. The first unit of my design is represented by the first leash on the right of my bundle. I remove the bundle from the carabiner and carefully pick off the first 4 pattern heddles. I loop the heddles over the shaft bar and lay it on the warp. As long as I don't do anything foolish, it will be safe enough there for a few minutes. I select another shaft bar from my convenient pile and count off the next 4 heddles. Onto the second shaft bar they go. Here comes the third. While I'm wrangling the heddles, I like to keep the bundle looped over my wrist. This keeps all my heddles handy and means less faffing around with infrastructure. I'm never dealing with so many at once that this becomes burdensome, but you may find a method that works better and feels safer to you. When I've finished 5 pattern shafts worth of heddles, things start to get crowded on the warp, and I begin to feel like I'm pushing my luck. I return the remaining heddles to the carabiner and drop it behind me. Now, I will return each pattern shaft to its waiting draw cords. I tend to do all of one side first, before turning my attention to the other ends. When that's done, all the leashes are either secure on their pattern shafts or safely stowed on their carabiners. I can either walk away without a care in the world for a well-deserved cup of tea or get back to it. Guess which one I'm going to do. I retrieve the carabiner and repeat the process for the remaining leashes. In no time at all, I'm done. That's 10 of my 19 leashes deployed safely and without drama of any kind. Now I'll do the same thing with the second red carabiner. Working carefully and in small groups like this, I find the job goes quite quickly. And without having to stop and count and recount, I am confident that I haven't missed anything or made any mistakes. When my second red carabiner is empty, I know I have all 19 of my single units where they need to be. A quick look at my diagram tells me my pointy points are next. I now need to move the leashes off my 2 green carabiners. They go on to the same pattern shaft with no hunting and pecking required at the back of the loom. This is a snap. Now I need to work on my points. Remember that I put these onto 4 carabiners. I will work from the center of each point outwards and rank my units down the warp on either side. Here are the 2 carabiners for the left-hand point. The green unit that lies between them is already on its pattern shaft. I will retrieve 1 leash off the inside of each bundle for the next pattern shaft. I'll do them one at a time to avoid disaster. First, I'll count off the first 4 heddles of the left-hand carabiner. 1, 2, 3, 4. I clip the carabiner back onto the remaining heddles for safety's sake and slide it out of the way. I stow my leash on my wrist while I remove the carabiner from the right-hand bundle and count off 4 heddles from that. To free my hands for the next selection, I pop both these leashes onto the pattern shaft before proceeding to the bundles for the points on the right-hand side. I draw forward the blue carabiners for my second point and repeat the process. I did a lot of experimenting to see what worked the best and feel confident everyone will find their own way. One tip I can pass on is the importance of working slowly and methodically, deliberately even. Count the heddles carefully. Sometimes counting right at the warp seems to work best. Employ the carabiners judiciously. Take breaks if necessary. Anything that can be done to forestall dropped heddles or counting mistakes is valuable. I found myself talking to myself and counting out loud. Anything to keep from having to repeat the process twice. When I've collected the 2 leashes on the right side, I thread the pattern shaft through them. Rather than pile shafts on the warp, I decided to hang this one from its draw cords before going on to the next. Seemed more secure that way. I continue in this manner, working 4 carabiners and 1 pattern shaft at a time until my blue carabiners are empty. You can clearly see the symmetrical arrangement of my 2 points at the rear of the pattern shaft pack. I only have the X shaft left to go. If all has gone smoothly, I should have 2 orange carabiners and 2 purple carabiners still hanging off the back of the loom. Astonishingly enough, that's what I've got. It's quick work to load them all onto the shaft at the back of the pack. And that's that. I timed it. The whole process, from the time I printed out my diagram to this point, took less than an hour with no mistakes. How cool is that? I think the carabiner method is a great way for manipulating leashes around the pattern shafts of a drawloom, whether you are arranging leashes at the beginning of a project or redistributing all of them later on. Give it a try sometime, and as always, thank you so much for watching.